Painting figures can be intimidating, but today I'm going to show you step by step how I paint this scene, and I'm going to give you the 3 keys to adding figures into your scenes. The first tip in painting figures is that you want your figures to have a feeling of motion to them. They can lean a certain way, you know, they're communicating to each other, they're expressing things, and you're never going to see a scene where every figure is just standing completely upright and straight. So this guy's leaning in, this guy's leaning over and picking things up, this guy is standing up straight, this guy has a slight lean here. People are all unique and different. Make sure that when you add people into your paintings that they are unique and different as well. Alright, and after my drawing I wet down both sides of the paper and I'm laying in a nice wet into wet wash. And when it comes to figures, this is point number 2. You want to incorporate your figures in each phase of your painting. So generally I'm painting my light values, my middle values, and then my darks. And when I paint figures, I want to include the figures in each of these phases. So in the light phase, when I'm painting the light values, I want to paint the light skin tone. I want to put in a little bit of light color for the fabric of their clothes that you see here. And all of this is going to add up to the final product. Just like the entire painting, we are building upon the light values, the middle values, and the darks, and we need each of those to let the painting look realistic. The same is true for your figures. Sometimes within students' paintings, I'll see a halo of white around a figure. They're doing their normal wash, and then they get up to where a figure's going to be, and it kind of like, because it's complicated and intimidating, they just paint around it and then come back to it later. Well, we want to incorporate our figures in each phase of the painting. All right, so this is me laying in the light values to this scene, and that is what that looks like. Okay, now I'm off to the races into my second wash, and in this wash I included my sky in that second wash because I wanted to incorporate a soft edge for the roof of this building because it's in the background of my scene. Typically I paint the sky in the first wash. In this painting I wanted to lay in the final value for the sky in the second wash so I could have a nice wet edge for this part of the painting. See how the roof line here has a little softer edge to it. It's not quite as hard if I had just painted it over the top of the blue sky. So I'm mixing up my colors as I get into these washes, and I'm going to zip forward here, and we're going to talk more about figures when I get down to those figures. So I'm really trying hard to see the connected middle value shape in this scene, and now when I get down into here, right, and I'm moving through, I'm trying to see those connected shapes. I want to move right into my figures. I want to connect those figures into that middle value wash as well. And so I'm going from figure to figure, looking for connections, connecting the shadow shape here into the shape of their clothing, down into the shadow that is down on the ground as well. But you can see how I'm trying to tie in the color of the figure's clothing. Every time I come up to the figure, I think what value or what color on this figure can be tied into what else I'm painting around it, okay? And we're zipping through here, and we're getting a little bit feeling of light now that we have our light values here. We have largely our middle values in place. And this painting, I'll be honest with you, this was a challenge. It was a challenge in simplifying for me. It was a challenge in the figures, but I think that the scenes like this are a lot of fun. But they are a lot of work as well. So now I'm starting to get into the darks and the details on the figures. And one thing that is important, my third key, is knowing what figures in your scene are more important. What figures need more detail and what figures that you can be a little less descriptive on. So these figures here, in this one here, I'm adding more detail on those figures. Now, when I get further back, like this person back here, that person is less important. They're in the background. I don't need to add a lot of detailed effort on every single figure in the scene. I can become selective and know kind of where the main part of the story lies in the painting. And for me, it's right along here. Mainly this guy, this guy, this guy. But the other guy, like this guy back in shadow, I don't need a ton of detail on him. And this person back here, I don't need a ton of detail there either. And one change that I made, and I'll walk you through this, is The figure was kind of light on top, and I decided to go ahead and put a hat on the figure to give myself some contrast. And I felt like that was a nice touch. That helped that figure kind of come forward and let this middle value background just kind of sit back a little bit more. It's important when you are doing this, especially a scene that's complicated, that takes a lot of thought and effort, to do a little bit of work, get to a stopping point, and then take a mental break. Step back from your painting, give yourself some time, because it's very easy once you've been working for so long to get bogged down in the details. You don't have as much of a fresh mind after you've been working for a long period of time. So it's okay to take breaks as needed. And you can tell as I get a little more darks on this guy, get a little more detail in here, our eye is starting to go over here, and that's what I want. This is the primary area of interest. This guy's of course important too. And as we get in those darks and details, those things become more and more evident. So I'm kind of finessing, getting in finishing marks, trying to make sure that I have a good area of interest here and that things are reading okay as a background. I used a little bit of gouache. Don't be afraid to use some gouache. I felt like I had lost a lot of the light on the figure. And when I do that, I get a thick amount of gouache on my brush, and then I try to apply that as cleanly as I can. But that's good for figures as well. If there's little bits of highlight, light hitting their shoulder, light hitting their heads, things like that, to break up areas of dark, gouache is really good in those ways as well. I wanted to put a little glaze on the ground, so I felt like the ground was a little light and I wanted to push our eye up into the scene a little bit more, so I did a little glaze at the bottom of the painting. And also that helped the light stand out here a little bit more. And after that work, here is a look at the final painting. So keep those 3 keys in mind when you're adding figures into your scene. Make your figures look lifelike. Have them lean. Have them not all just standing upright and straight in the same motion. And number 2 is incorporate your figures into each phase of the painting, and your light values, your middle values, and your darks, and really tie them into the scene. And number 3, decide who is most important, where do you want the most attention to go, and get those figures how you want them to look. And then the other figures that are more minor characters in the background, you can leave them more abstract. If you can keep these 3 keys in mind, I know that you can paint more believable and lifelike figures in your scenes. Have you ever been really excited about a painting and you get all set up, you find that right reference that you're excited about, and then it's time to go and you feel lost? You ever had that experience? Well, I have a free resource that I want to give to you today that can help with these problems. My 5 steps to plan a successful watercolor painting. I walk you through the crucial planning phase of your painting that will help you understand what you're going to paint first, second, and third. The planning is really so important, especially in watercolor. This medium is harder to correct. It's so immediate. So having that plan is very important. I send you a PDF that you can download. And the great thing about this is you can have it on your phone, you could print it out, and you can take a look at these crucial planning steps before you start each painting. All you have to do is follow this link here and download my 5-step guide to planning a successful watercolor painting.